Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked here on the channel. This is the series where I talk about every single book on my shelves because it's part of a deeply well thought out revenge quest that will probably only teach me that revenge is not a good thing. Today we are talking about Joe Abercrombie's Standalones, or the Great Leveller collection. Yeah, I've been calling these just the Joe Abercrombie First Law Standalones for a while. Turns out this nifty slipcase says the Great Leveller collection on it, so I guess we're talking about those. But just so you know, it's Best Served Cold, The Heroes, and Red Country. I think this is the first time I've ever put books up behind me, knowing that they wouldn't fall over. I bought all three of these books myself. I actually bought them in a charity shop for like £2.50, so a wonderful deal. Regardless of where books come from, nobody's paying me to talk about books except my patrons, and all opinions are my own. I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible. If you do want to go in knowing absolutely nothing, pause the video, come back when you've read them, we'll talk then. And I will link the storygraph for the series down below in case you want to check out any user-generated content warnings. I would recommend it. For Grimdark, I would recommend looking up the content warnings. Joe Abercrombie is a British fantasy author. He has written a number of other books, many of which have reviews up on the channel. I have a review for the First Law trilogy, for the Shattered Sea trilogy, went up last week, and the other series, the name of which I can never remember, the Age of Madness trilogy. I'll probably make a playlist and put it somewhere if I remember. These three books are all standalone books in the same universe as his original First Law trilogy and the Madness trilogy, these published between 2009 and 2012. We have the three books. We have Best Served Cold, which is a revenge narrative. We follow a character who has a big list of people that she wants to get revenge on. We follow characters who go along with her on this revenge quest. The book is split up into all these little revenges. Vengeances. Book 2, The Heroes, is the story of a battle that takes place at a place called The Heroes, but it might be that the name has different meanings. We follow 3 days of battle. The book is chunked out into those 3 days. We see how it goes. War is Bad, the Joe Abercrombie novel. The third book, Red Country, is the smallest of the three. It is another revenge quest. It is also more of a quest and a journey into unknown lands, is how I would describe it. We follow a character who comes back from trying to sell her wheat to discover that her farm has been razed to the ground and her little brother has been kidnapped, and goes off on a quest to find him. Right, here we go. So first things first, do you need to read the First Law to read these books? The original First Law trilogy, which came first. We're not going to worry too much about the Madness trilogy, okay? We're okay. I would say that you probably want to have at least read them. If you want the utmost top tier reading experience of these standalones, I would say you need to have read, understood and remembered a lot about the things that happen in that original trilogy, because I for sure did not. I haven't read First Law since probably 2020, maybe early 2021. It was one of the very, very first Overbooked videos I did, so we've come full circle. I didn't remember a lot about them. Thankfully, there are very good people who have kept the Joe Abercrombie First Law wiki very well up to date, so that is the other option, is you can use that as a bit of a cheat sheet of, I'm fairly sure that character was important before and I'm seeing them as a side character now. Can I double check who they are? Helpful, very helpful to me. I would say you want to at least have a familiarity with First Law. I wouldn't jump straight into these books with absolutely no context for the First Law at all. You probably could, but I think it would be a very different reading experience. But if you do start reading them, I would say they are very good fun. Joe Abercrombie writes engaging books. I have one exception to that. I am going to talk about The Heroes later on in the video. But for the most part, broadly speaking, Joe Abercrombie writes incredibly compelling characters, really enjoyable narratives. As somebody who doesn't like too much violence in books, it's just not my preference, the fact that I still really enjoy these stories is a testament to how well they are written overall. First Law, still not my favourite series of his. I definitely prefer his newer stuff, but these are very, very compelling. I read all of Best Served Cold on a train over to Belgium, and I wasn't bored at any point. It never slowed down, it just kept me engaged. It was a really good story. I think something about his writing style, his reliance on dialogue, and just generally how he crafts a story keeps it really engaging. Also, if you like that idea of kind of companion books to the original trilogy, getting to see where characters have gone, getting to see what happened to other characters, these have that in spades. It's definitely, as I say, a series where you meet familiar people, and if you remember who those people are, that's a really fun thing. Or if you remember afterwards when you read the Wikipedia article, that's a fun thing as well. At least for me. I think there is a good blend of that with newer characters, and it's not just a fan service kind of set of books. At least it didn't feel that way to me on this reading. I liked that for 2 of the 3 books, the main characters, the main perspective focus or the characters we were following the most were women. I personally just prefer Joe Abercrombie's books that have female characters front and centre. That's just how it's been throughout all of the things I've read by him. That's not to say I don't like the male characters. That's not to say I think they are less good. That's just my personal preference. So it worked for me that Best Served Cold and Red Country were female-led books. And obviously we are following Joe Abercrombie, whose handle online has been Lord of Grimdark for quite some time. If you like Grimdark, if you like Grimdark style, I'd be very surprised if you haven't already read Joe Abercrombie, but if not, and you like that kind of thing, these have it in spades. They are violent books, I already mentioned it, book 2 in particular, probably part of why I liked it the least. And yeah, you just get characters who aren't afraid to make the brutal choice, which can be very enjoyable in that weird kind of, I'm not sure even what the right term is for it, but the enjoyable thing of, I will never live in a world like this, I hope. Knock on all of the wooden surfaces around me, but it is interesting to read. Flipping that over, obviously, if you don't like that kind of thing, you are not going to enjoy these books. I would say if you're desperate to read Joe Abercrombie and the grimdark elements are holding you back, read The Shattered Sea instead. It is still violent, it is less violent, I talked about it last week. These books are not going to necessarily change your mind on that. Potentially Best Served Cold might be a slightly different perspective, but I would say it's not worth spending this number of pages forcing yourself to like something if you just don't get on with it. We're going to talk about the heroes. We're going to talk about it because I didn't like this book, and it was really interesting. I've now read 12 Joe Abercrombie books, and only one, possibly two, maybe the second book in First Law didn't hit quite its home for me, perhaps. But broadly speaking, I only remember actively disliking and really struggling with the heroes. I think something about it didn't work for me. My best guess is it required so much memory of people's names and people's allegiances that that's just not something my brain is wired to do, especially when I'm tired, which I have been for the last few months, so it's been a little bit tricky. I think for some people, The Heroes is probably an incredibly well done book. I think it's probably a lot of people's favourites. I do think it's a really interesting concept, it just didn't work for me. So bear in mind, you might not like all of these, and it's not a guarantee that if you read book 1 and love book 1, you'll love the rest of them. And obviously, again, just bringing it up, that connection to the First Law is important, and if you've not read that trilogy, that's quite a big commitment as well, to commit to 6 big, quite chunky books. I have found with Joe Abercrombie that when I've done them by audio, I've enjoyed them more. If I had had the opportunity to do that, I would have done that with this series, but I ended up reading them physically. So it's possible that doing Heroes by audio and having the different voices differentiated, I might have had a better time. I don't know. I would say if you're looking for other things to read that are similar to this, I am not necessarily the best person to ask. My grimdark reading has been slim. I've basically read Joe Abercrombie, a little bit of Ed McDonald, a tiny bit of Anna Stephen, I think, and not much else. So I'm sure there are wonderful channels out there that will gladly shower you with grimdark recommendations. I would say if you want more Joe Abercrombie having read these, read the rest of the First Law and then read Shattered Sea, or if these didn't work for you, read Shattered Sea and then come back. And then I think just sort of other classic fantasy. There's a lot like very tropey, not generic isn't the right word, but again that familiar classic fantasy vibes, which I'm not the best person to ask, but those places do exist. If you've got any suggestions for books similar to this, please do plonk them down in the comments below because I would love to hear them. I would probably like to read a little bit more grimdark, I just need to find the right authors. So, especially if you've got deep cuts, plonk them in the comments. Overall, I had the feeling that these books, I'm really glad they existed. I had a really good time getting to dive back into this world. I think they probably work better for somebody who has a better working memory of the whole of the First Law trilogy. I think they were written for fans of the First Law, but managed to do so without feeling super clicky, gatekeepy fan service-y. And that's a good thing to pull off, in my opinion. Have you read these? Do you plan on doing so? What are your feelings on standalone books compared to books in a series? Are you pro, against? What's the vibe? Let me know in the comments below. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also come hang out on Discord where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say an enormous thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams, and more. If you'd like to join their number, that's linked below as well. Thank you so much to you for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. This is the series where I talk about every single book on my shelves because it's part of a deeply well thought out revenge quest that will nonetheless... These